Okay, I think we're live. Let me just check. Yeah, yeah. So this is probably going to be a short video because I'm still a little sick. But I just wanted to talk briefly about the recent summit in France between Jacinda Ardern and Emmanuel Macron, and these two people were symbolic of the poison of that's at the heart of the state. They're kind of shining examples of why you shouldn't cede any power to government and why the whole idea of the state is so noxious, because once you relinquish control, you're giving it to essentially sociopaths, and these you have to be a sociopath to say that you want to control an entire country and the decisions of individuals. What you're seeing now in New Zealand, mass confiscation of any firearm. Um, they're banning. They're not just. They're not just banning distribution of violent threats or things that are criminalized in the United States or in other countries, even with liberal speech laws. They're essentially banning anyone from distributing the statement of the Christchurch shooter. So even people who want to do an analysis and really want to understand what this person's motivation was, which you would think if you just had a mass shooting where 50 people were killed, you would want to know why the person did that. Any reasonable person would want to try to understand the motivation of the shooter and see how they might be able to prevent a massacre like that from happening in the future. But they don't want to do that. So you're essentially banned from even publishing the manifesto, even if it's for the intent of analyzing it. And people in New Zealand right now, in Australia as well, they're kind of, this is where we are. They're it's exposing the lie that Western quote unquote democracies or republics are somehow the motivations of the people that rule them are that different from, say, Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin or any other kind of tin horn second world autocrat. There really isn't. All of these people want to control your life, and if you resist them, they'll find a way to crush you. And that's what's happening in France right now. They're trying um, to put the screws to anyone who has the temerity to actually post, to actually question the official narrative on a number of issues and post their thoughts freely and use the internet for what its intended purpose was, which is for discussion and debate and exposing ideas. Things like WikiLeaks are remarkable in the sense that they allow people to understand their inner workings of these terrible governments that require them to fork over thousands of dollars each year for just to be a citizen. And something like that would have never existed years ago. You had to rely on isolated instances of whistleblowers and people disclosing government secrets. But now it's hard. it's kind of stripped away the veneer of particularly Western governments, this veneer of um, good intent and the idea that what they're doing is in your best interest or in the best interest of the citizens. It's kind of stripped that away. And so of course the government wants to suppress that. And it's not about fueling extremism because these same governments want to push people further and further into the shadows. Um, so the idea that they want to prevent things like the Christchurch shooting rather than simply marginalize dissident voices is patently absurd, because if anything, they're just going to have more of these more Christchurch shootings or attacks like the one that Anders Behring Breivik committed in Norway, because they're pushing already isolated, marginalized people who feel like they have no stake in the system as it's currently constituted. They're just pushing them further and further to the fringes. And this was one of the things that the Christchurch shooter said, why bother joining some sort of anti-Islamic or anti-immigration group? Why even bother participating in the process when you're just going to be branded a hater and a bigot by the media? And so you're taking people who are already on the fringes of society, who don't subscribe to Ben Penzance thinking, and you're kind of pushing them off a cliff, and in their own skewed, warped imagination, giving them like a justification for these horrific acts. So, I mean, it's just a lie that they're pushing this in order to prevent these attacks. If anything, it's just going to spawn more of them. And ordinary people who aren't extremists of any kind should be concerned that their freedoms are going to be done away with, because I could definitely see if in 2020, if one of the members of the clown car that's running for the Democratic nomination, if one of them gets elected, you could definitely see, not just in terms of speech, but just nullification of the Second Amendment. It would be harder, slightly more difficult in the United States, but it's not inconceivable that something like that could happen here. And I think people should just be prepared for and aware, and just aware of how precarious their freedoms are.